My name is Darothy. I am 99 years old. I'm about to tell you something. 5 childish mistakes of my youth that made my old age difficult. Are you still making the same mistake? I'm not recording this because I think I have wisdom to give. At my age, you stop believing you have answers. You only have memories. And sometimes those memories sit with you quietly in the evening, like old guests who never quite leave. It's late afternoon where I am right now, the kind of afternoon where the light is soft and slow, and the room feels a little too quiet. I spend a lot of time sitting near the window. From here I can see the street. Not much happens there anymore. A few cars pass. Sometimes a child rides a bicycle. Most days the world feels far away from me. But inside my mind, it is still very crowded. 99 years is a long time to carry memories. Some of them are warm, but the ones that visit most often now are the small ones, the ones that seemed unimportant at the time. Little choices, little moments that didn't feel like they mattered, but somehow they followed me all the way here. When I was young, I thought life would feel longer than this. I thought there would always be another decade waiting politely ahead of me, another year to correct things, another moment to say the things I kept quiet. But life doesn't really work that way. It moves in one direction, slowly, and then all at once. I remember the house I grew up in. It had wooden floors that made soft sounds when you walked at night. My bedroom window faced the backyard. There was a tree there, a tall one. When I was young, I used to sit by that window and imagine different lives, different cities, different versions of myself. I imagined I would become someone bold, someone who would move far away, someone who would live a life that felt large. But imagination is easy when you're young. Reality is quieter. The first mistake I made didn't look like a mistake. It looked like responsibility. I began shaping myself around other people's expectations, family expectations, social expectations, the invisible rules everyone seemed to follow without questioning. I learned quickly how to be agreeable, how to avoid disappointing people, how to smile when something inside me felt uncertain. At the time, it felt like maturity. But slowly, something inside me began shrinking. Very slowly. So slowly, I didn't notice it happening. I remember being 22 years old. There was a small art school in another city. Nothing famous. Just a quiet place where people studied painting and spent their days surrounded by color and strange ideas. I had secretly applied there. No one knew. When the letter arrived, I opened it alone in my bedroom. I can still see the envelope in my hands. Thin paper. My name written in careful ink. They had accepted me. I remember standing there in silence, just holding that letter. For a moment, I felt something open inside my chest, something wide and bright. But then the familiar thoughts arrived, practical thoughts, careful thoughts, responsible thoughts. I imagined the conversations that would follow, the concern in my parents' voices, the confusion, the questions, and slowly that bright feeling faded. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and told myself it was unrealistic anyway, that someone like me should choose something stable, something sensible, something safe. So I stayed. Years later, I would sometimes wonder about that envelope. Not the school itself, but the quiet moment when I decided to silence the part of me that wanted something different. At the time, it felt like a small decision. But small decisions have a strange way of stretching across decades. Life didn't feel wrong after that, not immediately. That's the strange thing about choices. They rarely feel important when they happen. Days continued. I worked. I met people. I laughed. I built a life that looked perfectly normal from the outside. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice had learned something. It had learned that it was easier not to speak. And once that lesson settles into your bones, it becomes very difficult to unlearn. I didn't know then how many times I would repeat that same pattern. Different years, different situations, but always the same quiet moment. The moment where something inside me asked for space, and I gently pushed it away. Not dramatically, not with pain, just softly, as if it didn't matter. And maybe that is the strangest part of growing old. The memories that stay with you the longest are not the loud moments. They are the quiet ones. The moments when you could have stepped in a slightly different direction, but didn't, and life continued moving forward, just the same. Or at least it looked that way. Life went on the way life usually does, quietly, without announcing the weight of the years as they pass. In my 20s, I believed I was being careful with my life. Careful choices, careful words, careful steps. People often praised me for that. They called me sensible, reliable. Those words sound kind when you're young. But when you reach my age, they start to feel different. Because sometimes sensible really means silent. And reliable sometimes means you've learned how to ignore the parts of yourself that ask for something more. There was a man once. I haven't said his name out loud in many years. Not because it hurts, but because it feels distant now, like remembering someone from another lifetime. We met when I was 26. He wasn't extraordinary in the way people usually mean. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't particularly confident. But he had a way of listening that made you feel as if the world had slowed down. When he spoke, it was never rushed. He asked questions most people never ask. Not about work or plans, but about things that live quietly inside people. Dreams, fears, the small, strange hopes people carry but rarely admit. I remember one evening very clearly. We were walking near a river. The sun had already started sinking, and the water looked darker than usual. He asked me a simple question. What kind of life do you actually want, Darothy? Not the life people expected, not the safe one, the real one. I remember feeling suddenly uncomfortable, as if he had opened a door I had spent years quietly keeping closed. I laughed, not because the question was funny, but because I didn't know how to answer it. So I said something polite, something vague, something that sounded reasonable. And he looked at me for a long moment, not disappointed, just quiet. We saw each other for a while after that, but eventually he left the city. I didn't stop him. I told myself distance made things complicated, that it wouldn't have worked anyway. Years later, I sometimes wondered what would have happened if I had answered his question honestly that evening. Not perfectly, just honestly. But life rarely gives us a chance to return to those small crossroads. They appear once, and then they quietly disappear behind us. In my 30s, life became busier. Work filled most of my days. Responsibilities grew. Bills, schedules, obligations, the normal machinery of adulthood. At first it felt productive, important even. But something strange happens when work becomes the center of everything. Days begin to blur together. Weeks move faster. Years pass in ways that feel almost suspiciously quick. I remember coming home one evening when I was 38. The house felt unusually silent. I placed my keys on the table and sat down in the kitchen. For some reason, I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there in the fading daylight. And a strange thought passed through my mind. Not a dramatic thought, just a quiet one. Is this what my life is now? I didn't stay with that question very long. Questions like that can make people uncomfortable. So I stood up, turned on the lights, made dinner, and continued with the life I had carefully built. But now, sitting here at 99, I realize something. Life doesn't become difficult all at once. It becomes difficult slowly, piece by piece, through choices that seemed harmless when we made them, through years spent postponing small, honest moments, through silence, through waiting, through the quiet habit of telling ourselves that there will always be more time. There is one memory that returns to me more often than the others. It happened much later. I must have been around 60. By then, most of life had already taken shape. The routines were permanent. The quiet spaces inside me had grown familiar. One afternoon, I was cleaning an old drawer. Inside, I found a thin envelope, yellowed with age. For a moment, I didn't recognize it, but when I opened it, I remembered immediately. It was the letter from the art school, the one I folded away decades earlier. The paper felt fragile in my hands, almost like something that had been waiting patiently for me to return. I sat there for a long time, just holding it, and for the first time in many years, I allowed myself to imagine something. Not regret exactly, just curiosity. What kind of woman might I have become if I had followed that quiet feeling instead of silencing it? It's a strange thing to ask yourself when you're 60, and an even stranger thing to carry with you for the next 39 years, because by then, life is already written, mostly. You can still move through the days, still watch the seasons change, still sit beside windows and listen to the sounds of the world continuing. But some questions remain unfinished, not painful, just unfinished. And sometimes, late in the evening, when the room grows quiet again, those unfinished questions return, not loudly, just softly, the way old memories usually do. Now that I'm 99 years old, I spend a lot of time sitting near this same window, watching the world move in ways it once moved around me. Cars pass, people hurry somewhere, young voices echo from the street sometimes, and I wonder about the lives moving inside those cars, the thoughts moving through those young minds. Because when you are young, life feels endless. You believe there will always be another moment, another chance, another decade waiting patiently ahead. I believe that too. But the truth, the quiet truth you only begin to see when your years grow thin, is that life rarely announces the moments that shape it. They arrive quietly. A letter you fold away, a question you avoid answering, a dream you decide is too inconvenient to follow, a truth you keep locked behind polite smiles. At the time, those moments look ordinary. They feel small, almost forgettable. But time is strange. It gathers those small moments. It stacks them carefully across decades. And one day, when you reach a quiet room like the one I sit in now, you begin to see the shape of the life they built. Not the life you imagined, the life that quietly happened. I don't feel anger about it, not anymore. At 99, anger feels too heavy to carry. What I feel instead is a kind of quiet clarity. Life was never waiting for the perfect moment I kept expecting. It was happening inside the ordinary days I believed didn't matter. And sometimes I think about that girl I used to be. The girl standing in her bedroom holding a thin envelope in her hands. The girl who believed she had endless time to become herself. I wonder if she ever realized how quickly the years would move, how quietly life would settle around her, how suddenly she would wake up one day, sitting in a quiet room at 99, looking back at the small moments she once thought were unimportant. Maybe that's why I recorded this, not to teach anything, not to offer advice, just to leave these memories somewhere outside my own mind, because somewhere out there, someone younger might be listening tonight, someone sitting in their own quiet room, someone standing at one of those small crossroads that don't look important yet. If that happens to be you, I wonder what choice you'll make. And sometimes I wonder something else. If you reached 99 one day, what kind of memories would be sitting beside your window? If you feel like sharing that thought, you can leave it in the comments. I would like to read it. And if you choose to stay and listen to more stories like this, you're welcome here. There's still a lot of quiet truth left in old voices like mine.